Welcome to the Legendary and Green Team podcast, a spin-off of the Legendary podcast. With me today is Chesky
Heyo.
and Kyptan.
Heyo.
I am Era. Today we are reviewing Yendi, Book 2 of the Dragoon Cycle by Stephen Brust. Before we get into the book itself, I want to situate our listeners. This series is 40 years old and still ongoing. Yet, Yendi was written in 1984. Kip has volunteered to provide us a time capsule of 1984. So what do you have, Kip?
For 1984, I'm just going to bring up the Hugo and Nebula Awards. I figure that's a pretty nice proxy, and I'm going to just list off a couple authors who were getting recognized at the time. First off, Connie Willis, All Over the Place.
Ooh.
She's
the the Doomsday?
She's got like 4 nominees in this year, and to either side, she's got an additional like 7. So she's doing great.
Wow. Yeah.
Neuromancer won the novel for Nebula, and Larry Niven was also up for an award, as was Kim Stanley Robinson. Heinlein was still writing in this time period, but of course the Hugo Award for 1984 went to Startide Rising by David Brin. Yeah. Isaac Asimov, Robots of the Dawn, lost out. Moretta, Dragon Lady of Pern by Anne McCaffrey. And Andre Norton was named Grandmaster of Science Fiction.
Wow.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
It is kind of weird how, books that people either consider legendary or authors people consider to be, ultra famous were just starting back then, right?
Yep. And Foundation's Edge was just coming out. Book of the New Sun was coming out. Lots of fun stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, you guys ready to get started?
Yep.
I'm ready.
Okay, a quick recap. This story is set before Jurek. We find Vlad Taltos in Season 2, Episode 4 of The Sopranos, where Toronin, promotes Vlad to be a boss of a territory. We get a day-in-the-life glimpse of being a gangster in an elephant empire. As that goes on, another mob boss decides to muscle in on Vlad's territory. A mob fight ensues. Vlad gets some indirect help from his friends and more direct help from his group of enforcers, including people like Smiley, Styx, Sleepy, and Glowbug. And only one of those names isn't in the book. After several unsuccessful and one successful attempt on his life, Vlad gets better, falls in love with Kadi, the person who killed him, discovered that he was targeted as part of a convoluted plot to get an empire to attack the human empire. In the end, nothing much changes except Vlad kills other mob boss and finds the love of his life. So, What would you guys give?
And we get a little bit more insight into some characters from the first book.
Well, we get more insights to all characters. Yes. So before we get started into talking about the book itself, overall, what would you guys give Yendi as a 5-star rating? I'll start with Kip first. I'll save Sunshine for last. So
3.5. It's got one big flaw, in my opinion, that is central to its core theme, and therefore I can't forgive it. But I think it's fairly tolerably written and an interesting little mob boss log entry for parts of it. And then the finale, not entirely sold how satisfying that was.
Okay. Chesky?
I think, first I want to say that I feel slightly lied to about this book. But we'll get into that a little later.
Right?
It's fine. I still give this book probably a 4.25. I was laughing out loud just throughout the beginning of it, and just the silliness of what's going on, and just their reactions and the way he's dealing with everything. And then, it was really fun, and I liked it. And there was a lot of Easter eggs that I was finding, and just being like, "Oh, that's funny." I think this is from this. Who knows if it is or not? But it was good.
If I was just rating the unreliable narrator, it would be like a 4.5. But no.
Yep. So I'm gonna rate this one. To me, it was better than the first book, Jurek. I'm gonna rate it a 4. And you can either look at the one fatal flaw, which is gonna be may or may not be a recurring theme in these books, Kip, as a feature or a bug. So
I do remember being warned by you about this, but it was a very inconclusive warning.
All I can say is I try to be honest with my friends. So,
I was just glad there wasn't like a 2-page paragraph of info dumping about genetics and history.
That
I
was
was
better
waiting
this
for it.
time, wasn't it? Yeah. I will say that one of my favorite quotes ever about fantasy, fantasy generally, is found in this book, and we'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Um, but and this may be our way to kind of talk about the book generally, but before I talk on and on about the book, I think it might be worthwhile because both you guys are 21st century readers, and this book is written in 1984, and like, how did this book just like style wise hit you? Did it feel dated? Were there parts of it that were dated, parts that weren't? Did it just fit in seamlessly with your reading experience? I guess I'll start with Chesky first, and then Kip, you can tell me all the ways that this is totally misogynistic and awful. So I'm kidding. I'm
I mean,
kidding.
I'll definitely tell you one of the ways it's dated.
Absolutely.
You know, as a 21st century reader, I did not feel like it was too dated. I still felt like he managed to write kind of to people instead of to his time. I'm sure there's parts of it in there, but I thought it was good. It was interesting. He kept my engagement, and it didn't feel like it didn't feel like I didn't get the out of date feeling that I get sometimes when I'm reading other books where it's like, okay, well, that's clearly wrong. This was clearly wrong. I mean, I did like that he made the joke, talking about everything his father did and things that had happened like in the past that led up to his father buying his title. And it's like, also I could check the time without having to wear a watch or something. And it was just
Yeah.
like, that's hilarious. Like, that's what you get out of this is, so I mean, it flowed well, I thought, and wasn't, yeah, no issues with it on my end.
Well then, Kip, the floor is yours.
I'm going to continue saying that the whole system of psionics in general, that like little blocked off section, it feels very 1980s.
Mhm.
The idea that there were discrete telepathic abilities that large portions of the population either had or could learn to control. That's very 1980s mentalic psionics as this like pseudoscientific branch of telepathy that got really popular, and telekinesis, but we don't really see that as much.
It's interesting because so they have a whole house. The house is called Hawk, who's dedicated to psionics, and you actually get, for what it's worth, for better or worse, you're gonna get a whole like story dedicated to psionics
Yeah.
and all of that. So
We
yeah,
got
I
a
don't know what
clairvoyant in this one, but we didn't really get much time with them before they died.
that is true. Um, I'll say that one of the things that I don't want I'll call it forward thinking because it wasn't common at the time, but and Chesky touched on it. When, and this kind of segues into my next question. Here, the author treats magic as technology almost, right? Where
Yeah.
the magic is so commonplace that you use it to, as the book describes it. Well, all I get out of it is I can check the time, or I can stop from getting wet when it rains. So it's used as a vehicle to replace technology instead of this super mysterious unknown force. So
And it's also just like a financial cost
yeah,
that you have to pay. Like they're going to attack with sorcerers, so you have to pay for sorcery blockers. And you got to pay X amount to offset Y amount of offensive tasks. And it's just like, okay, who can pay more?
yeah. I mean, and if you think about it, that's a little bit of it is kind of true to form to to a modern society.
Yep.
There's some things you can get, but otherwise you're gonna have to go buy. You have to go buy your technology to be able to use it, right?
Yeah, you got to go to service market. You'd be like,
Right,
you
exactly.
got to hire a wizard to do your marketing.
That's exactly right. Well, and actually, so like you're my go-to guy on this, Kip. So I'm curious to what you think. So you're like, whenever I think of people who like are
I
into
th-
hard magic.
I think that I don't have enough information yet, but
Mhm.
everything so far has been highly self-consistent.
Okay. Well, so but yeah, let me kind of lay the ground because I think it's worthwhile for maybe to give a little bit of an explanation, but
I'm very
like,
curious about Zur Mountain and what is
yeah.
underneath it.
Well, how are you dealing with this rules magic system? Because he's not giving it to you
No.
really kind of at all, except in bits and pieces, and you can see that they can do pretty incredible things, like hold a castle in the sky, raise people from the dead like it's nothing, and
Turn
then
people into
you get
newts.
turn people into newts and they get better, or maybe not. And, like all kinds of things happen, but there's really no explanation of the nuts and bolts or how or what or
Why Vlad
uh,
doesn't think that it is a career path that he could pursue.
right. Like so, how are you experiencing the magic system?
Um, I enjoy that in the ways that it impacts the story. It's either Deus Ex like, where the dragons step in and they perform some sort of ritual or whatever it is that they do, but that's not Vlad's story. Vlad's story this time around was one of intrigue, romance, and mob boss.
Yeah,
And and in none of those was the magic really influential,
right.
or at
Um,
least not like the previous transactional way that we have discussed.
right. I mean, so Chesky, how are you taking the magic system as more of? It feels like it's almost like background scenery as opposed to being like a central part of the story, the way it is in some books,
Mhm.
nowadays. So how are you taking the magic system?
I take it fine. It's like you said, it's not really a big part of the story, and he doesn't. I like that he doesn't end up using the magic generally to solve his problems. It's kind of just a thing that's separate from him. I guess he's doing the teleport blocks and things, but it flows well. It feels nice. It's not egregious. Like I'm not like, oh, this is can do anything because they don't use it to do anything. They use it to do very specific things at specific times. Now, did I wish maybe he could have used his witchcraft a little more instead of just like testing one witchcraft thing and being like, oh, he's blocked. It's fine. I'll just never use my witchcraft again in this entire book. Yeah, maybe that would have been a little nice to like see a little bit more of it, but it's not like you said, the magic system is just a supplement to this story. It's not any part of a focus of the story. It's just like he's got to have magic. Here's some magic. You can tell the time. You can call on your link to the orb. If you talk to the Empress directly, she'll burn you. She'll destroy your body if it's not important enough. Like good times all around for everybody.
So I kind of look at this book as kind of having two parts to it. There's like that first part kind of leading into the multiple assassination attempts and the flaw in the story that Kip really, really, really wants to talk about. So right before we get to it, like the first part of the book, I mean, I said it tongue in cheek, but kind of seriously, it really did feel like I was like watching, like I was reading like a Sopranos like TV plot. I don't know what your thoughts were because it really was. I'm going to go to this, go to this street. I'm going to take over like this gambling house. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to get this much money from it, and that really seemed to be like the first like third of the book or up to half of the book. I
Yeah,
mean, what'd you think about that?
I really liked the tolling of losses and the almost it's not deadpan, but the almost emotionless way that Vlad writes out the arson and the deaths and the assaults and attacks that happen in various ways during that period.
Hmm.
It reads almost like a captain's log or something. Uh, it's a very different style of writing, and I thought it was done to pretty good effect.
Yeah.
It really made me feel like this is the sequence of events that's happening, and I'm not being over bombarded with details when we need to get through a bunch of these quickly.
Yeah, Chesky.
I think I feel the same way Kip does. It was a lot of fun to kind of read about how he goes about taking over his business and how he works for a guy and then he works for another guy. And then he's like, you know what? This guy's bad. And that guy just accidentally happened to fall into a knife with his eye. And so I took over and I went to all my employees and I was like, hey, the boss wants you to do this. And they're like, what? That's crazy. He's like, well, I'm the boss. And like, great, I'm on it, boss. I'll see you later. Like, let me get right on this for you. I love those scenes. That was a lot of fun. Just him working through it and being like, okay, we're making this much money, we're losing this much money. Just it was nice to kind of see the other side in a fun and a real, but not like gritty way where it's like, oh, we have to, do horrible things all the time. It's like, no, we want our customers to make money and to pay us back, and like, we'll work with people eventually. Like, our first instinct is not to break his legs.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys, but I think the other thing I took that really struck me on this read is you really kind of get a sense Vlad isn't a good guy, and he doesn't
No.
really try to he doesn't try to pretend that he really is. I mean, and I think that's something we can talk about a little bit more here when we get to the next point. But
But
yeah, I
he's
think it's
not
all kind of
racist.
yeah. He's not racist, right? He's just or actually, you know what? Maybe he is.
He's not self-loathing.
He's not self-loathing, but I mean, but maybe he is racist,
Yes.
right? You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
no,
You know,
he's definitely a speciesist.
yeah, I mean, he makes no bones about it. He hates the elves. He hates them, and he couldn't give a crap whether they live or die. So,
Yep.
I mean, that was made. He pretty much said it. I don't know. How'd you guys take that?
They seem to feel openly that way about humans. So
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
I,
an interesting thing when he was like just talking about that with Kati, and he's like, I hate all of them, and I'm like, you are really, really good at hiding it. Like I knew you didn't like them or most of them, and he's like, there's a couple that I'm okay with, but I still don't really care if they live or die. And I was just like, oh, you seemed like you do care a little bit in the first book about Morola and Algira and stuff, but I'll let it slide.
well, remember that Yendi was written in the past.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. No, that's what I'm saying. I was like, yeah, like so.
he's still an
He
angsty
changes.
teen.
He's still angsty teen.
And I was about to say, and I think it's different. I mean, like if you look at it, like if you think about it in real life, people can say, well, I don't like X generally, whatever, like, religion, culture, race, whatever, generally. Oh yeah, but I like my friend Tony, I like my friend, I like my friend, Allison, I like my friend, blah, blah, blah. Well, they're all that too. Oh, they're different, right? I mean, it's
Yep.
just the human condition, right?
Yep.
So, anyways,
We
I thought
feel first, then we justify after.
that that's right. And speaking as an angsty teen from a minority culture, I empathize a little bit with that sentiment of, you know what, nobody likes us. Like I'm kind of okay not liking people back anyways, without really understanding or being able to justify why, right? And it just took age and growing up and seeing the wider world to kind of learn better. So, anyways, I thought that was, and I thought Cotty's viewpoint was completely different and quite interesting. Maybe we can get to that in a minute. So, since we're talking about Cotty,
Clearly the better person.
so Kip's automatic 1 point deduction kicks in. So Vlad and Cotty have this long, drawn out romance of about 13 seconds, and
Yeah.
then they fall instantly in love. So, Kip, the floor's yours.
You know what? I just had to assume that they fell in love with each other while doing their background research. Except Vlad doesn't do any background research on his own that we see. He's like maybe heard of her reputation, but never heard of her as a person. And nope, immediately upon looking at her, instantly in love, and has to remind himself repeatedly every time that he sees her thereafter. Oh, I didn't do bad for myself, did I? I'm like, dude, you just met.
She hasn't even agreed to anything yet. Like, calm down.
This is one of the most blatant cases of insta love that I just had to let it go and be like, oh, well, this is happening. Yeah, and for what, because that like mob boss litany of things that happen ends about halfway through the book and gets completely supplanted by this new Cotty plot and the intrigue. I have to think that this book is at least a third about their relationship and romance, but it's not there. It's just this is how this happened, and now we're in love, and now we're getting married. And there were a cute little scene with the old guy at the end, grandfather. His grandfather, is that who that was?
Yes.
Yeah.
No spot. Yeah.
Yep. That was a cute little scene, but it just came out of nowhere.
I actually had to go back like twice to make sure I didn't like accidentally like miss a couple pages and be like, did I miss something important happen where he's like, she says something and he's like, oh, that's why I like you so much. And no, it was just, wow, I like you. Let's start making out like in your hospital bed, basically.
I like you. Here, let's go through why I'm not having a panic attack right now, because I'm letting you get so close to me, even though I am an assassin who never lets anyone get near him without weapons.
So
And you literally just tried to assassinate me.
well, no, she literally successfully assassinated him.
Yep. Well, she tried and she succeeded.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think they're in love?
Apparently.
Sure how it
I'm
seems
gonna,
written.
I'm gonna have to believe in soulmates for this to make sense.
So okay, let me give you a counter
I'm gonna
proposal.
have to believe that they're both
Let,
reincarnated people who are emperor and empress from a bygone era. I don't know.
let, let me give you a counter proposal that may or may not make sense. Okay. He's a mob boss, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he is, right? And in any mob boss movie, what happens? You find the cute girl, something traumatic happens, you fall in lust, right? And then you show her a good time, whatever, you sweep them off the feet before the day-to-day realities of living with that person really sets in, and you then have to live with the consequences of it, right? So
Generally not from the hospital bed of the assassin that tried and succeeded in killing you.
who are we to say how your hormones react when you're raised from the dead? Like, I don't know.
Having never been
Maybe it's
raised
an
from the
adrenaline
dead, I
rush.
can't
I,
comment.
is that the
I mean,
basis for a lasting relationship?
I got no, maybe he has to do that like once every couple months to kind of have the feeling. I don't know. So, and by the way, I don't think it was ever directly mentioned in this story, but just so you know, Yendi is a flying reptile, not like not
Jedi.
like a jurek, but like a snake with wings, a poisonous snake with wings.
Okay.
So,
I definitely got
I
that they
did
were
assume a
convoluted.
snake from the cover.
yeah, but just it's a flying snake with wings, and
Okay.
the
A
and
flying
if you
serpent.
had yes, and if you hadn't figured out from the plot, from the story, needlessly complicated plots or like their reason for living. So
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna answer the Vlad Kati Instalove question. Did it
huh?
bother me? Not so much. Was it really out of nowhere? Yes. Did this make me feel lied to about this book being their story? Yes,
Yes.
100%.
100%.
If I'd been told, "Hey, just read the next book," it's a prequel, kind of, that no issues with this at all. Being told, "Oh yeah, this is like their book," I was expecting like, oh, they're gonna get to know each other by like he tries to murder her, he can't, she tries to murder him, back and forth kind of a thing. Like, and of course that did not happen, and so it's but it was good. I
Yeah.
mean, I think they'll, I do think they love each other, but I think that's just because that's how Stephen Brust wrote it. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I read this book while I was out with friends, and or at least portions of it, about like the first third. And they were like, "Hey, what's it about?" And I was like, "Oh, it seems to be a story about how this assassin mob boss met his wife." And I was like, "It's interesting because it's going to be like romantic." And I
Or
assume.
romantic.
Well,
uh,
what? Well, to be fair, it is like a romance novel and not like a love story. I
and
mean,
yeah,
romance novels are heavy on the insta love and not so much on the development. So,
some.
Depends on the romance you're reading, yes.
If it's a dude where's my shirt novel from the supermarket for $2.99, then yes, more on the insta love.
I, I can't really defend it, but yeah, that was the best I have is that like maybe they're not really in love and the love develops or not.
I've read my Anne McCaffrey. I'm not entirely unused to it.
I'm just
So
glad that Stephen Brust puts like one big flaw in each of his books so far that's really easy to focus on and helps you forget about all the other bad stuff that could be in the book. So like he's got like a lightning rod of problems and he just like stabs in the book and then he's like, all the problems go to that, and you can the rest of the book's more enjoyable because of it.
Yeah,
Look at how
I
bad it could be.
I barely even get time to talk about how he uses exposition of like background research on himself to get his history out of the way.
yeah. So by the way, were you surprised or not surprised that Cadi was just a much better assassin than Taltos was?
I wasn't particularly surprised because Taltos does not, in his own head, seem particularly competent.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think I was too surprised. I think he's more of a long-term planning assassin and she's more of a, hey, the job's done, let's go get it done right away.
Yep.
She definitely seemed to have better martial abilities from what we could see. He's got more tricks.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very fair summation. That's a very fair summation. So, okay, setting aside now, let's. Do you feel better, Kip?
I feel better. Yes.
Did you
I,
feel
I
better,
still
Chesky?
feel lied to, but I feel better.
No,
I
look,
do feel better. It's always good to rant.
I never said this was their love story. I
I
said
never
this
said
was
you
how they
lied
met.
to me.
Said this was how they met. That's all I
Uh-huh.
said. So.
That implies a lot in this book when they're married in the first one. But like you said, I'm willing to move past this now. We got to take some deep breaths, and move forward.
Do we need to cleanse ourselves? Okay, are we good now?
Yeah.
So look, so we were introduced to some new characters, and we had development of some of our recurring characters. I believe one of you was like, I really want to know more about Morlun, and another one's like, hey, tell me more about Sethra. Like,
Yeah.
so we got a little bit more flavor of these other characters.
Mhm.
Did you have either one that you guys want to focus on or talk about, or any thoughts in general about any of these characters?
I
I'll
like
turn this over
Sethra
to
in
you
this
guys.
book. I really like Sethra in this book. And often what she wasn't saying in response to something was more important than what she did say in response. And how she kind of like looked at Aliera a couple times and was like, "You're being silly," but wasn't rude enough to say it.
Mhm.
Were you? I thought it was interesting that they dropped a bomb of that Sethra is significantly older by a matter of what, like an exponent older than everybody else in the room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least 10 times older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
So what about you, Chesky? Did you have a character that because I knew you were the Moreland guy, right? So.
I think so. I like seeing more. I didn't feel like we got too much more really on him. Like we get a little bit more on like learning who he would pick his empire and like his thoughts on, oh, let's just go to war with the Easterners. That's fine. Like we'll go to war, they'll push us back eventually. We'll go to war, they'll push us back. Like
Yeah,
but
he didn't care.
yeah, I didn't I just liked all of them. There wasn't anyone I was like, "Oh, this was so good." I liked all of his mob boss guys again, Krager just being like, "Hey, I'm here already in the chair. You just didn't see me." Again, and it's just like, "Okay, come on." Like, you got to notice your guy eventually, man. But no, it was all good, I thought.
That was that's Krieger's superpower, to not be seen, which
That's
would
right.
suck if you were a dragon, right? So,
Yeah.
no, I would say so. For me, there was a couple things that stood out to me this time. So, one on Moreland, like we were told he's dangerous, he's dangerous, he's dangerous in the first book, but we never really saw anything. And in this book, you kind of saw a little bit of what makes Moreland so dangerous. Like, because apparently they were going to go up against a group of magic user fighters, and then there was this one super deadly, sorceress, and so he took on. I'll take on the big gang of fighter magic users, and he was just taking them out left and right, and had like a.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good scene. Yeah.
So it was just kind of like a demonstration of, okay, so it's more than just talk. He really is as dangerous as people say he is. So I thought that was interesting.
That
I
was.
thought it was interesting that at least at this point in the story, that Vlad and Morlun have enough of a relationship that Morlun will just drop him 20,000 gold without a second's thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. I like that.
I
So
like
fast.
I like the introduction of Kira the Thief.
Another good friend to have.
Yeah, and the last book they kind of talked about it, but this book we really saw, at least to me, I really saw Vlad's absolute cold-bloodedness, his absolute ruthlessness. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
he kills one of his enforcers right in front of Krager. He,
Mhm.
For what?
exactly. Like if you look at it, it's like, well, for potentially intimidating me, right? That's how he framed it. I
Yeah.
mean, to me, it was just he was on edge and he just had enough
Yep.
and he snapped.
Yeah, he
So,
snapped.
Yeah,
He
he
snapped.
snapped.
which if you look, I mean, yeah, I hate to project forward, but I mean, hell, how many seasons of The Sopranos do you have to see before you realize these guys act on impulse and not necessarily on long-term planning all the time?
I never
So
watched The Sopranos.
you really should. Well, actually, no, you wouldn't like it. Never mind.
No, I wouldn't. The teleport blockers are actually doing a lot behind the scenes to keep me interested.
Well, I will give you. I will tell you something about book 3 that will interest you for sure. Okay.
And remember,
Um,
no misleading statements here.
no misleading statements for real. Okay.
It
Um,
has a one-word title.
yes. No. Hold on. We'll get to it when we get to it. Okay. So, do you have a favorite scene or moment, either one of you, from the book?
That's a
Um,
that's a tough one. I really like all the scenes where he's kind of putting things together. I wish the only thing I dislike about I like those scenes because he's like, okay, I've got it, but like I just need like 5 more minutes, and everybody's like, well, you're on a time frame, like figure it out now, or we're all moving forward. But I like following those scenes. The only thing I wish is I was like, wish we had just like a teeny bit more somehow to the reader, so we could mostly figure it out with him. Like we can kind of figure it out, and maybe if you're smarter than I am, you can, you've got all the pieces. But I need like one more hint or like 2 more hints to just be like, I get it, right? You know what I mean? Like to kind of figure it out at the same time he's figuring it out, because he'll see something and then he'll be like, oh my gosh, this puts it all in place. And I'm like, but what did you see? What did you see that like will help you bring it together? Like tell me so I can bring it together at the same time. Like, so I like those scenes a lot because they're fun where he's just like putting all the pieces and he's like, okay, this and that and this and okay, and this is there, but I just wish I had like one more like hint to push me over the edge.
While you're saying that, just one thing I want you to focus on, and we're going to talk about Easter eggs in a moment. There are Easter eggs that he's laying out that so in the past I used to think that some of the stories he wrote were retconned, but as you go through and as I go through on this reread, I'm like, no, he laid this path out a long time ago, and so there are Easter eggs that if you're paying attention, really paying attention, he's giving you clues as to certain storylines that kind of emerge as the books go on. So, and they're there to be seen. So,
I
He
but
feel
what
even
is
like I
has
what?
picked up
a
a couple of those.
I was gonna
Do
say
you
he
have a
even
favorite?
has a future Easter egg pop up that he didn't even know he was writing.
That's right. Kip, do you have a favorite character moment, TV
Um,
scene, whatever?
I think my favorite character moment was when Temik died.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
His the first like major named subordinate of Vlad's that dies in this story.
Hmm.
And I think that was a fun inflection point for the novel, because after that Vlad did not hold back.
Hmm.
And
It's true.
that's where the gang war really started escalating.
It's good. I like that. For me, there's a whole bunch of one-liners, but the one-liner that always stuck with me is, "No matter how slow the wizard, a knife between the shoulder blades really cramps his style." So
Mhm.
that was the first time I ever read anything like that before, and this was like right when tabletop gaming was a big thing, and I'm like, I'm gonna be a thief, 100%, So and that's just my personal thing. So we've been talking about Easter eggs. So what Easter eggs did you guys see or want to talk about?
I got one here.
I thought back to my first visit to Zur Mountain and shuddered.
Okay, so that's book 4. Just so you know, that's book 4. All right. I'll let you know that's book 4.
All
Kip, okay?
the mentions of a trip to Deathgate Falls.
Mm,
That's book 4.
That's book 4. Okay.
yep.
That's book 4.
The dagger called Ice Flame, which was sort of Zur Mountain in hand or something. I don't know enough about it to say more.
So that's not
Yeah.
one particular book, but I'll stop right here. So in book 1, he talked about great weapons, right?
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah.
So Ice Flame
Yep.
is a great weapon. And so look for if you read throughout the stories, you'll get a whole history of what the great weapons are and what they signify. And there is one book, I don't want to mention the book, where you get kind of like the wrap up explaining what they're meant to be. Okay.
Hmm.
But that does get explained.
And something about the stiffening of a dragon's neck tentacles being a sign of danger. I'm assuming that's going to come up again.
It does. There's a book called Dragon.
Okay.
Okay.
Those were the 3 that I had immediately marked.
Chesky?
My Easter eggs were a little different than Kipton's Easter eggs. Mine was, I'm pretty sure I caught a Monty Python reference. So
Oh yes, he did get better, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I
New
saw
into a new.
saw
They all
that
get
one.
better. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And then the
Yep.
one he didn't even know he was writing at the very beginning of the book, he talks about how people are like onions. He's totally referencing Shrek before Shrek was even a thing.
100%. 100%.
So, and I'm sure
Sometimes
if
you
next
gotta do.
time I read it, I'll find more.
Yep. Yep. Um, Yeah, so there's plenty of Easter eggs there too, and Kip caught some good ones. And you're right about the Monty Python reference. So uh, I told you I would give you a little taste of book three. Book three starts forward in time again. It's after Jarek.
Mhm.
Okay, and this is about. So the third book is called Tekla, and as you can tell, each book is representative kind of the house. Well, Tekla
Yeah.
is the house of the commoner.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. And we have Kadi's point of view given to us in Yendi, and we have Vlad's point of view coming out in Yendi. Those two point of views come to a head and their relationship in book three.
Hmm.
And it's not an insta love or an insta decision thing, it's the main part of the story.
Does she decide that she wants to take that assassination contract again?
You'll have to read book three. Maybe their love makes it, maybe it doesn't. So
Maybe the way has to be cleared for the reborn empress. Who knows?
are you willing to give book three a shot?
Sure.
I'm
Sure.
always willing to give book 3 a shot.
Yeah, no, book 2 was interesting until it turned out to be a lie.
Kip, I am I figure Chesky's okay. He's gonna like book three just fine. Book four he's gonna love. I need to get you to book three. If I get you to book three, you're fine. So just
Yeah.
get to book three, okay?
Okay.
Is this
Yeah.
that
All right.
fabled, it gets better after so long argument here?
No. I will. I'll make a promise to you right now, Kip. If
Guys,
you
I
leave
promise Recluse gets better at book 22.
oh God, oh God. I never thought I would say an author overuses onomatopoeia, and then I met Ellie Modison. So
Yep. It's just whole paragraphs of onomatopoeia. It's great.
I will make you a promise here on the podcast, Kip. If after book three you're like, Era, I'm done, I'll respect it and we'll be done. Okay?
Okay.
Fair? Okay.
Chesky's
And
shaking his head.
Chesky,
No.
me and you, we can go on. We can soldier on without
soldier-
Skip the traitor. It's fine. No, I think Kip will be in after book three. So,
Oh, good.
all right, guys. Any final thoughts? Any wrap ups? Anything you like to say about the book or life generally?
That final denouement, like parlor scene, could have been 20% shorter.
Well, okay. So are you talking about with the Sorcerer's Green or Noah's Prom?
Yeah. Sorcerer's Green. Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole explanation of how everyone's politics aligned and was causing the whole Yendi plot to occur. Repeated things, just like one too many times for each thing, just for my taste.
Yes. That's interesting. I actually didn't mind it at all. But I can see why. Like, I think it was
Yeah.
worthwhile to kind of find out.
I don't know how many times we had to say that Marolin didn't care about a war. It just kept getting said over and over and over again when we worked through the chain of consequences.
Maybe that part could have been shortened, but as soon as we learned that the Yendi are like super overly complicated, like their plots have to be plots within plots within plots, then it was like, okay.
If it had been Tim
that's all
Curry
fine.
narrating it in like a sing-songy way in the style of Clue, it needed a rhythm, is what it needed.
Needed a rhythm, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Marolin in the foyer with the some Rogers and Hammerstein.
I mean, I feel like the author was maybe making the point a little bit too much, but also didn't feel like he was overdoing it by going, look, all these guys, like they all have these alleged high fancy goals or ideals. They're all kind of pricks. Like none of them are like exceptionally nice people. And that was kind of that's what I took that ending part to be. Everyone's kind of a jerk at the end of the day. Like they all have their own justifications, but none of them are nice people.
Yeah. They're playing games of society and don't care about the genocide that they're contemplating, or they think it's fun.
That's right, and then it's interesting because then at the end, then you get Kadi kind of going like she's going like this is morally and fundamentally wrong, right? And she has this eloquent explanation, and Vlad's like they're assholes, they all deserve to die, f them. So
I'm
it's
pretty
kind of
sure
like
Sethra only likes me because she's humoring Marolin or something.
right, so. It's kind of interesting. It's almost like here's an educated version versus an uneducated version of how you should feel about it. That's kind of how I feel about it sometimes when I read that. That's my knee-jerk reaction. So
No,
Fair.
Vlad's friends with dragons, and they are not friends of equal value back.
that's true. And
Yeah.
and Noah's Paw, I'm sorry that you didn't like that, but for what it's worth, Noah's Paw is all over book 3. So
I
you're
liked
gonna
him. I
you're
just
gonna learn all about him next book.
didn't think he was particularly there. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's gonna be there. He's gonna be there next book quite a bit. So you may be sick of him by the end of it. So or you may love him. So I don't know. All
We'll
right.
see.
We'll see.
All right, guys. For what it's worth, I like this book. I thought it was fun. I always think it's this to me was a more urban fantasy book than I remembered it being, and it felt like a prelude of what was to come for urban fantasy books as they developed in the future. So
Look,
Mm.
it was so much better than Jade City.
Yeah.
oh
So
yeah.
much better than Jade City.
Well, I mean that's damning with faint praise, man. Like thanks, kids. So I mean, can you
Like
do me a little bit better than that?
people say Jade City, it's like, oh, this is like a mob boss, and you. No, this felt more like a mob boss. This was a tale of back alley stabbings and arson and complicated plots and intrigue.
Look,
I mean,
absent
Kragar
the
solves all problems, but
hey, put it this way: absent the insta love, how would you feel about the book?
see, because I would also want to remove the main plot of the book from consideration and just focus on the writing because I love the writing.
Yeah, the writing's good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, well, to me, that's why I like all of Bruce's books is that I think he's one of the best writers he has a way with words and just kind of throwing these one-liners out there and just leaving them hanging and just moving on. He doesn't dwell on
Mm.
stuff too much, except for those 1 or 2 points where he kind of overdoes it. But otherwise, it's just he makes his little story, moves on. I don't know if you guys get that impression.
I get the impression that he very carefully crafts the flow of his paragraphs. Sometimes doesn't care about being long-winded and expositional. That's kind of the point and one of the things that he enjoys. And I'm just gonna have to get used to that.
So,
Mhm.
we'll talk offline, but he has another set of stories that does the exact opposite. So that to me is what makes Stephen Bristow fascinating is that he can
Eh,
just change his writing style just to suit whatever he wants to write. So
Yeah, and I'm saying long-winded and in his descriptions, but I only mean that in reference to himself because I find him remarkably pithy in general.
yeah. Well, I hope everyone gives Yendi a try. And guys, thanks for trying this book out. Any final thoughts?
It was fun. Really enjoyed it. I'm glad we're reading them.
I want to know how tightly all of these books are tied together in time, but I'll figure that out at some point eventually.
You will. Thank you for joining.
I really want to know if we're going to go like 1,000 years.
I'll let you know as of now, as of the date of the last book, we have not gone 1,000 years. It's
Okay.
all within Vlad Taltos' lifetime. Now the books ping back and forth in time, but as you get more and more books, you can actually pick Jarek as the initial point of reference, and you can slot in every book in time and create a chronological order.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Cool.
So and up until relatively recently, up until like the last couple books, Yendi had been the first book in time.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so no, I say that and I'm wrong. Book four is the first book. Book four is the first book is the first one in time. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Book
Okay.
4. Okay, so
It's all good.
okay, guys.
Okay.
Thank you for joining the Legendarium Green Team podcast, a spin-off of the Legendarium podcast. We would like to thank Craig at the Legendarium, Horizon Brave for getting started, and I'll see if I can get this right this time. Galactic Damages for the music, Jingle Punks.
Other way around.
All right, that's my thing. All right. Bye,
We'll fix
guys.
it in post.
It's fine. We get it. Good
No,
night.
we have to leave that the way it is.